Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. McClellan, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is December 1st. At midnight, in 30 days, at least 5 million Americans could lose access to their health insurance. 22 million Americans who benefit from enhanced premium tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, as they began open enrollment a month ago, started to see their health insurance premiums spike. Last week, in honor of Prematurity Awareness Month, I stood on this floor to talk about how the Affordable Care Act expanded insurance to millions of Americans, how Medicaid expansion expanded insurance to millions of Americans, and how critically important to a full-term birth with a non-fatal outcome for mother and child, how critically important that health insurance coverage is. In the middle of the week, with several other mothers of preemies, I talked about my story, my birth story. 10 years ago, when I woke up one morning and my placenta ruptured, and after almost bleeding to death, my daughter, Samantha, was born by emergency C-section. It was the scariest moment of my life. And the hardest moment was the fact that I could not hold her, see her, or touch her for 24 hours as she was in the NICU. And then the moment when I walked out of the hospital and had to leave her in the NICU for 6 more weeks. I don't remember how much that NICU bill was, because I was one of the lucky ones who had health insurance cover that stay. But on average, a NICU stay is $70,000 a day. That is more than a single person who qualifies for the enhanced premium tax credits under the Affordable Care Act at the maximum rate of 400% of the federal poverty line makes in a year. That person makes $62,600. The average NICU stay is $70,000. Now, I was lucky not only because I was able to take my daughter home 6 weeks later, but that entire 6 weeks, I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay that bill. All I had to worry about was her and my recovery. There are a lot of people that aren't that lucky. There are a lot of people trying to decide right now whether to start a family. There are people right now who are in the process of starting a family who wonder if they will be able to afford their health insurance come January 1st. And they're having to make really tough decisions now as they are in the middle of open enrollment as to whether or not they can continue to afford health insurance. Tonight, members of the Congressional Black Caucus will bring you stories from our constituents, from the states that we represent, of people who will be priced out of the insurance market, who will be one illness, or accident away from economic devastation if Congress does not act to extend the enhanced premium tax credits beyond December 1st. Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield first to our chairwoman, the representative from New York's 9th District, Yvette Clarke, to tell some stories.
I thank the gentlelady from Virginia for her steadfast leadership and for hosting our special order hour this evening. Mr. Speaker, good evening. I am Representative Yvette D. Clarke, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, proudly representing New York's 9th Congressional District, located in Brooklyn, New York. I want to thank my colleague, Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, for anchoring this Congressional Black Caucus Special Order Hour. I rise tonight with my colleagues of the Congressional Black Caucus to bring awareness to the fast approaching ACA tax credit funding deadline, 30 days to go, and to give voice to everyday Americans who will be harmed by the Republican-led healthcare crisis. The enhanced ACA tax credits are set to expire on December 31st, unless congressional Republicans join Democrats to extend them. Without an extension of the ACA tax credits, tens of millions of individuals and families can expect to pay significantly higher health insurance premiums for marketplace plans. Without these tax credits, Americans will see their health care costs skyrocket, increase by hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per month, which will force families who are already struggling with the cost of living to face unaffordable premium spikes or lose coverage altogether. The ACA tax credits have ensured that families, seniors, young adults, and workers in every CBC district could afford quality health care. In our districts, we've heard from countless constituents who received their health care on the ACA marketplace who are now worried about the cost of their health care going up. One of my constituents, Layla Wilson, a small business owner who depends on the ACA marketplace, said, quote, "My heart dropped when I got an email earlier this month stating that I might lose my insurance benefits. I already struggle to afford the city that I have grown up in and contributed to as a small business owner," end quote. She continued, quote, "Shopping for health insurance through the marketplace created by the Affordable Care Act was the first time that I had any assurance of affordable, good insurance. We must protect this program. It's a matter of survival," end quote. At every turn, Republicans have turned their backs on the American people. President Trump and congressional Republicans promised the American people that they would take swift action on day one to address our nation's affordability crisis by lowering the high cost of living. Well, instead, they unleashed the most aggressive assault on our nation's health care in history, and the damage has been devastating. Across the country, we are already seeing hospitals, nursing homes, and clinics that serve our communities closing their doors. And now Republicans' refusal to extend ACA premium tax credits is driving up costs and pushing coverage out of the reach for many in our communities. The CBC and House Democrats stood united for more than 40 days to prevent exactly this outcome, while Republicans refused to negotiate and left working families to bear the consequences. We are calling on our Republican colleagues to join us in putting the well-being of the American people above partisanship, to put people over politics. This is not an abstract policy debate. It's about real lives. It's about parents deciding whether to fill a prescription or pay the rent. It's about seniors choosing between a doctor's visit and groceries. It's about young adults, gig workers, caregivers, and small business owners who depend on the ACA marketplace for the coverage that keeps them healthy and financially secure. So let me be clear. Allowing these tax credits to expire is a choice. It's a choice of greed, it's a choice of cruelty, and it is the wrong choice. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our chair for those remarks. And I was so excited to begin telling these stories that I forgot to ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on the subject of this special order.
Without objection.
Thank you. I would like to now yield to the representative of Georgia's 4th District, Congressman Hank Johnson.
Thank you, Representative McClellan, for running point on this special order hour for the CBC. You are a legislative champion, both in the State House and in the Federal House. And so it's good to be with you tonight, and I thank you for recognizing me. I also want to give a shout out to our beloved leader of the CBC, Representative Yvette Clarke, who's doing a fine job leading us through these difficult times. And these are difficult times for us. We here in Congress having difficult time. You know, you see it, but the difficulties that we face are nothing compared to what you face out there. You are the ones who are struggling to put food on the table. You are the ones that are struggling to keep a roof over your head and the head of your family. You are the ones struggling to work 8 hours a day for an honest day's wage, only to come up short and having to work second and third jobs in order to make ends meet. While you see others living lavishly, surrounded by gold ornaments on everything that they can touch, building ballrooms for the rich and wealthy after knocking down the historic east wing of the White House and doing it without anybody's consent, just deciding, waking up and deciding, I'm going to do this. We live in a democracy, not someplace where a king is in charge, and that king is playing politics with the people. The other day, he floated the idea that he wanted to extend the Affordable Care tax credits, Obamacare tax credits. He floated that idea, but got some pushback from a few representatives on the Republican side of the aisle, and so he snatched it back. He doesn't realize that real people are depending on those tax credits in order to make insurance affordable for them. People like Vivian in my district, who I had a phone conversation with recently about the rising cost of her health care premiums due to the Republicans' cruel refusal to extend Obamacare tax subsidies. She told me, quote, that's just an amount I simply cannot afford. Representative McClellan and Mr. Speaker, her premiums are going from $50 a month all the way up to $1,260 a month, from $50 a month to $1,260 a month. There's no way that she can afford that. Vivian has suffered from psoriatic arthritis since she was 27, and she now has vision problems in one eye. She relies on specialty medications to deal with her conditions. And while Vivian faces skyrocketing health care costs, her husband is dealing with cancer. Luckily, he's on Medicare and is receiving the care that he needs. But if Vivian is cut off from her access to care, there's no way that she can keep going and taking care of him at the same time. Without the Obamacare subsidies, she said, my quality of life will be non-existent. Vivian told me that without health care and access to her medications, she would lose vision in one eye. And because the medications help keep her arthritis at bay, it allows her to do seemingly simple things, just to tie her shoes or walk without pain. Obamacare subsidies, she said, have saved my life. I don't know what I'll do without it. People are people. Access to quality, affordable care shouldn't be a partisan issue, she said. And I agree. Americans like Vivian, who are out there, those are the people that Democrats are fighting for. In the wealthiest country in the world, no one should have to worry about affording medical care. That's why I will work with anybody in Congress, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, who believes that access to quality health care is a human right and not a privilege reserved only for those who can afford it. Mr. Speaker, I've got a number of other testimonials from people in my district, the 4th District of Georgia, who have written and emailed what their situations are all about. They are many, and they are excruciatingly painful to listen to. Over 1.5 million Georgians are in the health exchange, in the marketplace, and 340,000 of those, or about a third or a fourth, will lose their coverage if we don't do something about these expiring tax credits. A family of 4 earning $82,000 a year will see their annual premiums double to around $7,000 per year. It's just unsustainable for people to have to go through this month after month. And so we need to do something. I appreciate our caucus for hosting this special order hour. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and to hear more stories from Georgia, I now yield to the representative from Georgia's 7th District, Congresswoman Lucy McBath.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak out on the rising cost of health care, which are putting undue burdens on the American people. And I want to thank my colleague, Representative Jennifer McClellan, for consistently continuing to elevate the voices of the Congressional Black Caucus members as we talk about the stories of our communities and the stories of our people and those that we represent, highlighting the needs of those in our nation that are suffering right now. I want to thank our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Yvette Clarke, for her earnest, continued work to also make sure that the Congressional Black Caucus is standing on the front lines, trying to each and every day to make sure that we are defending people's right to exist in this country freely and fairly without these undue burdens. Earlier this year, we watched as this Republican congressional leadership reached historic new lows in their inability to work in a bipartisan fashion to meet the needs of the people that we were elected to serve. For 43 days, Speaker Johnson refused to come to the table and extend the health care subsidies, which will prevent premiums from skyrocketing for the millions of Americans who get their insurance from the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And that's about more than 70,000 people, constituents in my district alone. And during that same time, we watched President Trump and his administration play politics with federal food assistance jeopardizing benefits for hungry families. I heard a story in my district in Georgia from Rich about the impact that these cost increases would have on his livelihood. And I've heard many stories, but this one really struck me. He writes, and I quote, "I am the self-employed sole provider for a family of 4, where 2 of us have pre-existing conditions. If the Republicans get their way and remove the subsidies, my very basic catastrophe plan, style HMO, will literally increase tenfold. I'm currently spending 39% of my income on health care, including the subsidized ACA policy. Removing subsidies will ultimately lead me to financial bankruptcy," end quote. And there are more stories just like this, and they're a window into how the chaos and unpredictability of this administration is making it harder on working families to succeed and thrive. Since January, we have dealt with the uncertainty and the chaos that has been brought by this second Trump administration. From the unpredictability of the tariffs, the rising cost of health care, and the increasingly unattainable goal of home ownership, what is going on in Washington should concern every single American in this country. Congress and the Trump administration should be doing more to lower costs and improve outcomes for our hard-working families. As I have continued to do since I first came to Congress, I have been committed to addressing the concerns of the families who I'm very honored to represent. No family in this country should ever be forced to choose between paying their insurance premiums or for prescription drugs over paying their mortgage. That is unconscionable, and that is most definitely un-American. We must identify solutions to put the dream of home ownership back into reality for young Americans. And we must make it less expensive for Americans to get the skills necessary to provide a decent life for themselves and for their families. But they can't do that if they're sick. They can't do that if they can't go to work. They can't do that if they can't pay their bills, their hospital bills, their medical bills. I'm a 2-time breast cancer survivor myself, and not a day goes by that I don't think about how egregious not extending these ACA tax subsidies is to the American people. I am a lucky person. I'm very grateful that I had the ability to have private insurance, group insurance, where I could pay for all of my health care, and I didn't have to sit there and worry about how I was paying the bills while I was getting healthy and well. But there are people all over this country that if they ever get sick, that is the absolute demise of their ability to be able to live in this country and care for their families. And that is un-American. I'm so grateful to Chairwoman Clark and my fellow CBC member, Representative McClellan, for convening us again tonight as we look ahead to the year of 2026. I truly look forward to working with every single one of my colleagues to build a better life for the hard-working families that we are privileged to represent. But I honestly pray every single day that everyone here, every one of us in this chamber, truly is committed to the same ideals. And I yield.
I thank the gentlewoman. I now yield to the representative from Florida's 20th District, Congresswoman Sheila Scherflis-McCormick.
Thank you so much, Representative McClellan, for hosting this tonight, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for hearing the cries of our district and what they're suffering and the political anxiety that they're living in, just thinking that their health care for them and their families will be stripped from them. Mr. Speaker, I rise today for a woman named Maria. Maria lives in Broward County. She is a home health aide who works full-time, raising 2 children, and still cannot afford health insurance without the tax credit from the Affordable Care Act. Because of those credits, Maria can take her blood pressure medication, and her son can see a specialist for his asthma. These are not extras. These are basic human survival and dignity matters. But if these credits expire, Maria's premiums will more than double. She will be forced to choose which child sees a doctor and which child stays home and waits to get better. Mr. Speaker, that is not a choice any mother should have to face. That is not freedom, that is fear. And Maria is not alone. In Florida's 20th district, more than 20,000 people depend on these tax credits, and many are already dealing with serious gaps in their health care. This is not a policy debate. This is not a question of who we choose to value. This is a question of dignity for all Americans and their right to survive. I'm calling on every member in this House to look beyond party politics, party games, and trying to get the limelight, and actually put human beings' lives in front and center. The shutdown may be over, but our responsibility to protect the health and dignity of the American people is not. If we do not pass the ACA tax credits, we will be guilty of political malpractice for each person who goes without health care and who has an unfortunate demise. Once again, I stress every member in this body to make sure we retain health care and dignity of all the Americans in this country and their right to have health care and survive like anyone else. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman, and now I yield to the gentleman from Maryland's 4th District, Congressman Glenn Ivey.
I thank my colleague from Virginia for yielding to me now and for putting this together. I appreciate the fact that you took the leadership and the initiative to bring this forward. And I want to thank my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus as well for taking a stand on this issue, and the House Democratic Caucus overall. This is the issue we fought about with respect to the government shutdown. This is the issue that has not gone away. I suppose the White House and my Republican colleagues were hoping that it would, but it's worse now than it was even then. In fact, the Republicans knew this problem was coming all the way back on January 20th, when Mr. Trump first took office, to much fanfare, and they began moving forward with his legislative agenda, the Big Beautiful Bill, and other pieces of legislation, and I don't even know how many executive orders they put together and put out, undermining the government from the standpoint of government employees and making damaging impacts across the board. But they failed to address this particular issue. In fact, I'll come back to that in a moment, but not only did they not address extending the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, they made the problem even worse. In the big ugly bill that they passed, that included a $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. So the health care safety net in this country, to the extent it is a safety net, was damaged terribly by what they've done. And it's about to get infinitely worse when these tax credits expire at the end of the month. Now, I know my Republican colleagues have been fighting against Obamacare for years now. I can remember back when it was first passed 15 years ago. In this chamber, there were over 60 votes to repeal and replace the Obamacare piece of legislation. And they kept going year after year after year, but somewhere along the way, about 5 years in, they figured out, you know, the American people actually like Obamacare. They don't call it Obamacare. They might call it the Affordable Care Act, but they kind of liked not being treated as having pregnancy treated as a pre-existing condition. And they kind of liked having the ability to have their kids stay on their family insurance plans until they turn 26. So the efforts to repeal it not only failed, but this has gotten stronger over the years because people have come to realize that without it, they might not be able to afford health care at all. And so I've decided to bring in a couple comments from people in my district. There are too many to read all of them, but this one is from Beth, who lives in Greenbelt, Maryland, which is in my district. She's looking at her premiums going up $9,372 this year. And she has major health conditions that require ongoing health care that she can't avoid. And this was brought on by major surgery that she underwent several years ago. And her case isn't unique. In the state of Maryland, the impact that's estimated on 14,000 or so members of my district, a 60-year-old couple, $82,000 income is looking at a 168% increase if these affordable care tax credits are allowed to expire. A family of four, ages 45, 15, and 10, they're looking at a 200% increase in their monthly premiums. Obviously, most families can't sustain that. Now, I'm going to pick one. I read an article in the Washington Post a little while ago. This is from a gentleman in Altoona, Pennsylvania. That's not my district, obviously. That's the district of Congressman Joyce. But his name was Matt Hornberger. He's 61 years old in Altoona, Pennsylvania. His monthly payments for him and his wife will rise from $670 to $2,054 monthly payments. And he said this: between the high deductible and $25,000 in premiums, this is 40% of our income. I'm just trying to live a life here and be able to go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor. He ought to be able to do that. In fact, every American ought to be able to do that. So what have we gotten from our Republican colleagues in the 9 months or so since they took over the White House, the House, and the Senate? Well, not much. I remember the president saying in the debate that he didn't have a plan, he had a concept of a plan. I'm not sure we've gotten much past the concept point 9 months later. But he did say, what about HSAs? What about that? Well, you know, I was looking at that, doing a little research, and an economist, Doug Holtz-Eakin, who works for the American Action Forum, a conservative think tank, said this: there's a place for health savings accounts to augment insurance and fill things out around the edges, but it can't be the core insurance product. And the reason for that is because it's not designed to be the core insurance product. Matter of fact, we've got HSAs in place now, but 66% of these or so only have $1,000 or less in the account. Now, as you heard from my colleague in Virginia, $1,000 doesn't go a long way in our healthcare system. $70,000 a day for the NICU system. I remember I'm a kidney cancer survivor. $1,000 sure wouldn't have covered my insurance for the surgery that I underwent. Matter of fact, it wouldn't even have covered the MRI that allowed us to find it, fortunately very early on. Now, what's the path forward? I'll say this, I've got to complain a bit, because we've been talking about this issue the whole time. I'm a father, I've got 6 kids. And this reminds me a little bit of one of them. He came home from school one day and he looked at his mom and he said, looked at his mom, of course, and said, Mom, will you help me with this project I've got? And she said, honey, I'm a little tied up right now. Can I help you out later? And he said, well, we can't really wait on this. And she said, why not? And he said, it's because it's a big part of my grade. It's a huge part of my grade. And she said, okay, well, I'll help you out with it, but when's it due? He said, tomorrow. And she said, when did you know about this project? And it turned out he knew he had this assignment months ago, but he hadn't done anything to get ready for it. He hadn't let us know that he needed the help to work on it, and he certainly hadn't done any work to prepare the project. That's what our Republican colleagues are doing right now. They came in office on January 20th, knowing that these ACA tax credits were going to expire, didn't do anything to address it. And not only that, we brought it to their attention when this bill was moving through, the big ugly bill, and tried to address it then, but they refused to extend the tax credits then. We tried to offer amendments at the committee level. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We offered four of those to try and amend this piece just to extend it. We can try and fix it. If you got other things you want to do with it, let's extend it now so it doesn't expire. They refused to do it, voted it down 4 times on a party line vote, over and over and over again, just like they had done over the previous 15 years when they were trying to get rid of it. Maybe this is death by 1,000 cuts in their minds, but something strange happened along the way. The American people started getting these notices in the mail that their premiums were about to double or triple. And the American people, millions of them across the country, started realizing that there is no way I can afford to pay that. I'm going to be forced into the choice of either dropping the insurance or taking some other drastic measure, selling my house. One lady said she might have to pull her kid out of college to pay for this health care coverage. It's absolutely outrageous, but the failure to do something until the 11th hour is a total abdication of their responsibility of leadership, not just in the House, not just in the Senate, not just in the White House, but entirely across the board. The Republican Party didn't wake up to this until the American people started screaming in their ears. Well, now here we are. What's the path forward? Well, Senator Schumer, this is back during the government shutdown piece, at the end of it, he said, well, tell you what, why don't we just extend it for a year, put a task force together to try and work out differences, because I understand my Republicans don't agree with everything. Let's take a year and extend it and try and work it out. Not only did the Republicans in the Senate reject that, they actually called him, they said, this is stupid. I can't believe he would propose this. Those were the types of comments that he got from his Senate colleagues for proposing a 1-year extension. Right now, there's a 3-year discharge petition that would extend the tax credits for 3 years. I don't know that there are any Republicans who've signed on to that. But I tell you what, I think we've got about 9 legislative days left. Like my kids, at least my kids were only in, early teens. But if they want to do the big fixes they've been talking about with respect to health care, they're not going to be able to do it in 9 days. Now, I know they're going to try and do something to save face, but at the end of the day, the extension is really the only realistic way we have to go here. And I got to say this, if they don't do the extension, it's going to be devastating for families across the country, millions of them. We were talking a little bit about how much these things could cost. The HSA is $1,000 average. You look at this average cost for, let's say it's a heart surgery. Just the surgery, not even the stay, between $30,000 and $200,000 just for the procedure. I don't even know how much my cancer surgery cost because I had health insurance. I didn't have to check it like that. We had to pay some deductible, but nothing dramatic. But we wouldn't have been able to afford it. I wouldn't have gotten the surgery because I wouldn't even have known I had cancer because we wouldn't have gotten the MRI. That's where we're putting the American people right now. Well, actually, not we. The Republicans are putting the American people right now. It's time to end this. The clock is running out. The calendar says the time has come to do something. Put some kind of proposal on the table. Before I got to say this too, on the proposal piece. When the Speaker passed the bill, that was I think July 25th, if I recall correctly, and left town. Oh, I'm sorry. July 25th, left town for the August recess, came back, passed the bill, and then left town again. So there was a stretch there where I think we had been in session Between July 25th and when the government finally reopened, I think it was 12 legislative days. And to my friends out there in the country, how many of you could only work 12 days in July, August, September, and October and still have a job and still get paid while you're out? That's what they did. So the time has come to get this done, finally, to make some kind of an effort to reach a bipartisan solution and resolve this crisis that was created entirely by my Republican colleagues, that was totally avoidable, but they decided to run into the fire anyway. So let's fix this. Let's protect the American people. Let's allow them to go at least 1 year, maybe 3, so we can extend this so they can make sure that they continue to have health care coverage while we're working on this bill. Let's get it done. And with that, I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire as to the time remaining?
The gentlelady has 20 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take a personal privilege to close this special order hour with some stories from Virginia, which I know you, Mr. Speaker, care a lot about. You and I served together in the state legislature there, where we were able to find common ground across the aisle a little more easily than we're able to do in Congress. But in Virginia, about 350,000 people benefit from the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits, enhanced premium tax credits. 30,000 in my district, the 4th. For a family of 4 that earns $129,800 a year, they're looking at premiums that will increase by $4,675. A family of 4 earning $64,000 a year will see their annual premiums increase $2,571,000. A 60-year-old couple earning $82,800 a year will see their annual premiums increase $11,968. That is a 174% increase. That's what Virginians are facing if we can't find common ground to solve this problem, even temporarily. Our former colleagues in the General Assembly have predicted that at least 60,000 Virginians would end up canceling their insurance coverage due to affordability if they lose access to the enhanced premium tax credits. Let's put some faces and names. Last week, Cardinal News, which covers Southwest and Southside Virginia, both of us represent portions of that part of the Commonwealth, they told several stories. One from Reagan Fisher Weisbrod from Salem, a husband who is self-employed, and his wife. They have 2 children. Weisbrod works 3 part-time jobs to help support the family while keeping the flexibility needed for her children. She spends some days as a substitute teacher and as a business manager for a library association. She does some bookkeeping on the side. None of these jobs offer benefits. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, roughly 2 decades of experience in health insurance and accounting, and she's willing to take almost any job that will offer benefits. She said even if that means working at McDonald's, because she doesn't want to let her children go without health care. Her projected monthly premium increase is $400, which would raise her monthly out-of-pocket costs to $1,900. And on top of that, her longtime doctor has moved out of network. It's astonishing, she said. She spent 3 weeks combing through plans and eventually found one that would save the family about $100 a month, bringing their premium down to $1,800, allows her to keep her doctor, but it has a higher deductible. She said the worst-case scenario is her out-of-pocket cost would be $20,000 on top of the monthly premium. Ultimately, it came down to, I don't go to the doctor that often, my kids don't go to the doctor that often, And so we'll just roll the dice. She said, we'll wrap some bubble wrap around us, I guess. I don't think bubble wrap is going to help if they get in a car accident. Victoria Cassels, an accountant in Roanoke, worries about her adult daughter who lives in Richmond, who is a self-employed graphic designer with an autoimmune disease. Her condition limits how much work she can take on, and she depends on marketplace coverage. Her monthly premium rose by $400, about 3 times higher than it was last year. And Cassell's going to do what she can to help her daughter cover the costs if she can't take on enough work to meet this new expense. Cassell's prepares taxes for individuals and small businesses and says more of her younger clients are talking about dropping health insurance altogether because they just can't afford it. In the last few years, she's had a slew of clients in their 20s and 30s who have started their own businesses, just getting started in life. They don't have the savings to afford the increasing costs of health insurance. Without health insurance, it's going to be very difficult for them to start a family. Ben Pearman, financial advisor from Bent Mountain in Roanoke. He runs his own business, which is well established, and he has a steady income, but higher monthly costs has led him to reconsider his options. As a single man in his 50s, he pays for his own health plan, and next year his monthly premium will jump from $724 to $935. He can absorb the higher cost, but is considering switching to concierge care, a model in which the patients will pay a flat monthly fee, but that would leave him without insurance if an accident happens. Linda Bartlett, 64, entered semi-retirement last year and now works part-time at Roanoke's Mass General Store. She turned to the marketplace until she qualifies for Medicare. Her premium is about to double, bringing her monthly payment to $1,200, which is nearly all of her Social Security check. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield now to the gentlewoman from Illinois' 2nd District, Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
Thank you, my colleague. Mr. Speaker, I rise today as the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust to urge my colleagues across the aisle to extend the ACA tax credits. As you know, they're set to expire at the end of the year and will cause monthly health bills to skyrocket for millions of Americans. The rising cost of health care goes beyond the individual. It affects Black small business owners. A business owner in my district owns several coffee shops and worries about her employees being able to afford health care. She feels responsible for her employees, but health care is a large expense for a small business. The ACA premium tax credits provide affordable care to her employees, allowing her coffee shop and her employees to thrive. Another business owner in my district runs a wine production business that sells nationwide. Despite her success, she has to rely on her husband's job for health care. These are 2 small business owners who have created their own success and through their businesses created jobs for other people. Republicans love to say they support our economy. It's time to actually support the health care of small business owners, who are the backbone of our economy. Republicans also love to say the best option for health care is a job. My constituents have a job. They also provide jobs for more people. But they all receive affordable health care through the ACA. Without the ACA tax credits, their employees may have no other option but to go uninsured or find another job. If they decide to leave, my constituents' businesses won't be able to run. It's simple. We all do better when we all do better. We're all healthier when we're all healthier. Let's extend the ACA premium tax credits. Let's make health care more affordable and accessible. Thank you, and I yield my time.
So I want to put this debate in a larger context. I was in the state legislature when the Affordable Care Act passed. It wasn't perfect. Our healthcare system's never been perfect. But what it did between the marketplace and expanding Medicaid is it got the number of uninsured to record lows, at least in Virginia. I can't speak to nationwide, but in Virginia, we saw our uninsured rate go to record lows. We were able to expand Medicaid on a bipartisan basis because it didn't just benefit urban cores, but suburban centers and rural communities. Rural communities that had high numbers of uninsured, who were worried about how their healthcare centers, their hospitals, were going to have the volumes to stay open. So we expanded Medicaid, and during I call it the big ugly bill, we put millions of Americans at risk of losing their health insurance through cuts to Medicaid. We saw a list of over 300 hospitals in rural areas identified as being at risk of closing. And during the August recess, I traveled all over Virginia, not just to talk to my constituents, but as one of only 2 members of the Energy and Commerce Committee, to talk to a wide cross-section of Virginians. I visited a dental clinic in Abingdon. 80% of their patients are covered by Medicaid, 80%. The other 20% uninsured. Before that clinic opened, that community got dental services once a year when a mobile dental clinic showed up, and the line was incredibly long to get 1 day of dental service a year. When I visited this clinic, I didn't come in with any talking points. I just came to tour and I asked, what keeps you up at night? And the director says, I don't know how we're going to keep our doors open with these Medicaid cuts. 2 TV stations were there who were there when the clinic opened because they understood what a big deal this clinic was, not just for Abingdon, but the entire southwest corner of the Commonwealth. And my colleague who represents that area in response to that visit said, Democrats are just fear-mongering. Well, lo and behold, less than a month later, 3 rural clinics closed, citing Medicaid cuts in H.R. 1. A hospital in Farmville closed its labor and delivery unit. I ran for office because I grew up listening to my parents tell stories when they grew up in the segregated South during the Depression. They saw the best of government and they saw the worst of government. And the best of government is when people came together to solve problems, to help people who were hurting through no fault of their own, who were working day in and day out and couldn't afford to put food on the table, couldn't afford health care when they got sick, couldn't afford a roof over their head. Worst of government is when we sit here and focus more on how can I score political points, or how can I benefit the wealthiest 1% on the backs of every other working American. And I'm going to tell you, as I traveled around Virginia in August, in October, in the 54 days that we weren't doing our job here in Washington, not having committee hearings, not voting on the House floor, what I heard was people losing faith that our government knows how to be at its best. But we got to get back to that. Because I'm going to tell you what, our system is not perfect. That's why in the Constitution it says our government was formed in order to form a more perfect union. Not a perfect union, a more perfect union. And the beauty of our form of government is when we listen to the people, when we see They're hurting. And we have an opportunity to do something to stop that hurting. When we have an opportunity to feed the hungry, when we have an opportunity to house the homeless, when we have an opportunity to care for the sick, when we have an opportunity to welcome the stranger, when we have the opportunity to visit the incarcerated, when we do for the least of these, we're at our best. We've gotten away from that, Mr. Speaker. We better get back to it, because the American people are losing faith that this body, Congress, will do its job. We better do it. They're depending on us to. They've told us they're worried. You've heard stories tonight. This is just one thing people are worried about. We need to get back to our better nature. Come together, find common ground, and help people who are wondering, come January 1, how am I going to afford this health insurance? What am I going to do when my kid burns their hand, ends up in a burn unit with a $15,000 bill that I can't afford to pay? What am I going to do if my baby is born prematurely and has to stay in the NICU at an average price of $70,000 a day? People are wondering, do we hear them? And are we going to act? And with that, I yield back.